This is SSN
Story Studio Network.
And this is the leading ladies networking after show. This might be my favorite music that we have right now at SSN. It totally matches your vibe, Menna.
It totally does. You captured it.
We totally did. By the way, I'm Erin Trafford. I am joined in studio right now by Menna Riley, who is the queen of networking in the Halifax Regional Municipality, possibly in the province, possibly in the region. We're going for in the country. And our guest in studio today is Jen Warrington, who is the founder of the Warrington Group. We're going to get into what all that means. But I'm so happy to be here with the three of you. Well, the three of us. This is the last episode of the year. This is crazy. So you had an event last week. I feel like it was just like 2 months ago that we started talking about maybe we should just do after show podcasts. And here we are at the end.
Actually, that was the beginning of this year, Erin. I don't know about you, but the space-time continuum post-COVID is a real thing. And I'm sure, Jen, you can agree.
Yeah.
That was in January. And
no, it wasn't. That's a lie. That's a lie. That's not true at all.
Yeah.
I think this whole year has been a blur. And you're right. I've had multiple conversations with folks out at events, and talking about contracts and start dates and when we want to do things. And you're like, holy, like, are we already talking about Q2 of 2025? Isn't it still 2023?
Yes.
But it's not. It 100% is not. So the conversation I want to have today with both of you is, given that we are quite literally, the calendar tells us, at the precipice of a brand new year, a lot of folks are evaluating a couple things. How did things go over the last 12 months? And what do I want the next 12 months to look like vis-a-vis our network, our relationships, who we're talking to, the rooms we're in, and Jen in particular, with respect to your expertise, which I want to know more about, how I am going to advance my personal goals with respect to my career, because that's what you do, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a career strategist and recruiter. I've been in recruitment since 2007. And the career strategy stuff just really came very, very naturally and evolved as part of the business when I started in 2020. And it was in the middle of the pandemic. And it was very much, I've been laid off. They've sent me home. I've lost my job. I don't want to go back. I actually hate what I'm doing. All of those things around what do I do next?
No big deal.
Right.
I just realized I hated my life and I need to change everything. What better time?
Yeah. And I think we were all home and, taking inventory of, I don't love what I've been doing. I've been doing it because I've had to, or I love now that I work from home, but they're going to make me go back. And there was just all of these things, and it really leveled the playing field for everybody. And so for me, I'd worked corporately for 10 years, lost my position through a restructure around the time of February of 2020, where it was like we knew there was something happening, but we weren't really sure. Finished 5 weeks later, and it was don't leave your driveway and don't talk to your neighbors and let's say goodbye to your family and all the things. And so as people were reaching out saying, what are you doing? How are you doing it? I was doing everything from my dining room table on LinkedIn and just kind of networking and putting it all out there that I was going to go on my own and try to disrupt the space that I was in. So the career strategy stuff really wasn't part of the original plan, but it's been one of the most rewarding parts of what we've done because we've changed a lot of career paths for a lot of people in the last 4 years.
This is going to sound like the dumbest question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Tell me, what is career strategy?
So it's not a dumb question. A lot of people make the assumption around career coaching. And there's the difference is that, when you have a coach, there is like the raw component and you can do it. With the strategy, it's like we're giving you the plan. And so I look at resumes, hundreds and hundreds of resumes every single day, and 95% of them are awful. And I read cover letters that are also awful, or LinkedIn profiles that have no real presence around it. And so instead of saying, Erin, you need to go and download this resume template and do it, I'm like, here's what you need to do for your resume. This is what I want to know about you that's different than the copy and paste of your job description that you're putting on your resume. And here's the plans forward so that you can get the right seats at the right tables and make better money.
That's what it all comes down to. And now I am seeing, Menna, this thread, because what Jen just described leads me to, this is all about getting the right people to see the right thing, right? It's not a blanket approach, which leads us to networking. So how do these two things, Menna, coincide? This, if I'm looking for a job or I'm looking to get a promotion, how does networking play into that?
Well, I think one of the best things you can do, and Jen, you just alluded to that, was having a goal in place. So being strategic about where you're placing your effort and your energy, and also really operating from that mindset of this is what I'm going for. You're not just going to mix in with the crowd. You're going to make your presence known. And that's really what comes down to, your personal and professional brand. So just like on LinkedIn, what's the first impression I'm getting here? That's what you're doing in networking. You're making that first impression. You're making yourself memorable.
So is it fair? Like, again, I'm just here to be the dumb person in the room and ask these really dumb questions. But is it fair to say, like, when we go to an event like Leading Ladies or something else, a conference or something like that, should we be just thinking of this as this is a 3-dimensional living, breathing version of my LinkedIn? Like, is that what it is?
Yeah, I'm going to jump in there and say, yes, 100%. I mean, I think definitely pre-COVID, it was you go to networking events, you go to conferences, you work the room, you do all of the things. Well, then when COVID happened, well, you couldn't do that, right? Like you were only talking to whoever you lived with, and that probably got tiring for a lot of us really quickly. I know, right? Like it's just a completely different world. We're not all going in a million different directions. And so LinkedIn essentially becomes that community for you to like outreach for, whether it's business or just staying in touch with people, or even like staying relevant in the information you needed to know about the industry that you were in. And that's what LinkedIn affords you to do. So I think they complement each other very well, like your virtual network and your in-person network. And I think you need to have both. Don't think you can do one without the other. So
interesting. And what about this whole idea? And I mean, I tend to, I wouldn't say I struggle with this, but it's something that I wrestle with in balancing is how I show up in particular on LinkedIn as a leader in media who runs her own company, but then also make sure that what I'm posting aligns with my personal values so that I don't appear stiff, because people who know me know that that's not what I am at all. But it's very easy to come across that way when you're just on LinkedIn. So what I guess I'm asking is, Menna, you might be best to answer this, is how do we make sure that our LinkedIn profile that's really locked in and we're putting out great content and it's really highlighting our professional capabilities matches that personal values that we bring to our networking event, where maybe we want to be a little more holistic and talk about our kids or our vacation, or, how do we marry the personal value with the networking?
Well, I'm curious to hear what Jen has to say on this, because I know you've got some great fodder for this question. But the way I would approach this, and it's a great question, is that one thing I teach in my courses is how to reverse engineer the impression you want to make.
Interesting.
So if you go into a networking event, you meet someone and you have a great conversation with them, and they turn around and they're about to say, I just met Aaron Trafford. What's the next word you want to hear out of their mouth? Right? And so that's the impression you want to make. And then you reverse engineer the energy you're bringing, the conversation topic, just everything to that moment. And the more you practice that, the closer you'll get.
So it's almost like a mental rehearsal, right? It's like, what do you want people to say behind my back?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Jen, you want to weigh in? I feel like you're like, yes, but there's more.
Yeah, so two things I would say. One would be like, we want our names thought of and mentioned in rooms that we're not in. So even when we're in the Leading Ladies room and we want to be like, oh, you need to meet Aaron or Jen or Menna or whatever, we want that. But the after piece is we want other people mentioning our names for great reasons. So to Menna's point about the energy, I think when it comes to LinkedIn, I love what you say about the personal kind of values. You need to get clear on what your personal values are. And working with the career strategy clients that I do, a lot of people don't know what their personal values are. So it's really hard to then replicate that and then put it out onto a social media platform, also knowing that it's a social media platform that has boundaries different than you can post whatever you want on your Facebook and your Instagram and your TikTok and all the things. You cannot do that on LinkedIn. right? You're not supposed to be posting selfies. And again, people have done it, but you also see those people very quickly go away. If, everything when it was around the US election, there were a lot of people that were just like, okay, this is not the platform for that. You need to take that back to your more personal, right? So on the LinkedIn piece, it's very much about what are my personal values? And if I don't know them, I have to figure them out. And then how do I start to create that professional piece around putting out who I am and being authentic and sharing that without it starting to blur the line of being too personal like we see on the other platforms. So there's a bit of a balance with it for sure, but it makes a huge difference because we need authenticity, right? People need to know our stories or know what it is that we're bringing to the table when we're networking or having conversations. And for me, I've been using LinkedIn since 2007 when I started in recruitment. But in 2020, when I went on my own, I built the entire foundation of this business through the LinkedIn app and a dollar store notebook because I didn't have a computer and I couldn't go network anywhere. I didn't have a choice. It was only that. But I had to get really clear on how much was I willing to share and how was I going to share it so it didn't ruffle the wrong fellow feathers, sorry, because it is a business community platform.
Yeah, you're not posting your lunch and you're not posting
No.
like the cute new shoes you got.
No. And if you are, so that's a really great sentiment because I do see some people will post things, Sean Meister, somebody who's fantastic and he's got it down because he gives he gives some insight and he's, and again, really focused on the Nova Scotia community as a whole. But it's again, like if you're posting your lunch, right? Is the statement that you're making around that, like you love the fact that you can work from home and you're making a nutritious lunch for yourself, and what does someone think about the ability to work from home and how it changed the workforce in the last few years, whether it's in your industry or what have you. So we're almost creating thought leadership, but again, the spider web and the ripple effect of what we're posting out there is not just being seen by the people in our communities or on our Facebook feeds or whatever. It's like the global business community, and like it has a huge impact.
How often are you seeing it in the work that you do, Jen, where somebody maybe gets a job or is offered a position from a company that they didn't even realize was aware of them because of what they're doing on LinkedIn? Like I'm always shocked when I meet somebody and they're like, "Oh, you're huge on LinkedIn." And I'm like, "What? I didn't know you before 30 seconds ago. How do you know me?"
Right.
How often does that happen?
It happens more than what we think. And it happens more than what people are willing to admit, because I think there is still, it falls under the social media umbrella. So you're like, I can't get a new job because of social media. However, there's always eyes watching, right? And if you're putting out content, and as like wearing my recruiter hat, and I'm going and looking for candidates for our clients that we're going to hire for. So I'm looking for specific profiles. I'm going and looking for an accounting individual with 10 years experience in this kind of software. And then I'm going to see what their profile, because it becomes their virtual resume essentially. So when we're going and doing that direct sourcing, I'm going and looking for profiles. So then I say, oh, this person came up on my feed and I'm reaching out and having conversation. As the business owner, when you start putting out content and you're a thought leader, or you're just, expressing what's working or not working in your industry, because maybe you're frustrated by it or what have you, people see that. And again, because the business community is global, I mean, like there's 500 million users on LinkedIn. Right. So people are going to see it, because you could comment on something that Menna posts and I might not be connected to you, but because I'm connected to Menna and what you posted gets some traction on her feed, it shows up then on mine. And now I know who you are. So it's kind of like a blind date. Like you don't know what you're getting, but you're getting something, because it's just the spider web effect of it is crazy.
What does it look like, Menna? Is there ever a case, or what scenario would you envision, if we're going to use that reverse engineer kind of mentality? So let's say I am specifically on a job hunt. Either I have a job that I don't like and I really want to leave, or I don't have a job right now and I'm looking for my next thing to do. I'm going to a networking event. Are there specific do's and don'ts for me if that is the situation, versus I'm going to a networking event simply to meet more people and expand my network? What do we do if we're doing it with that express purpose of hunting?
Well, I think the last thing you want to come off is salesy and awkward and pitched and rehearsed. Mm-hmm. So I definitely encourage people to ditch the pitch, bitch. But it's really important to connect with, to be authentic. You just have to really be clear, like Jen said, on your personal values. Also, what are your goals here? Who do you want to meet? So that if the conversation steers itself towards exactly what you're hoping, they ask, so what brings you here? And you can say something that aligns a little bit better with that. And you can also go with the flow. So I would say something like, I'm actually right now looking to be connected with this sort of person. And do you know anyone like that? So it doesn't really put them on the spot, but you're still articulating exactly where you want to be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you're not really, you're kind of going through the back door by saying like, this is what I'm looking for. And if it's them, you're one step closer.
Exactly. Yeah. And then again, the second step absolutely is to make sure your LinkedIn profile and really your online presence aligns with that.
Mm-hmm. Jen, what would you say about that? I'm sure you've heard some horror stories of people going to networking events who are on job hunts. I'm sure you have.
Well, very much to Menna's point, whether it's at an in-person event or on LinkedIn, I always say like, don't slide into the DMs with an ask, right? Like if you're on LinkedIn, and you're not going to walk up to someone at an event and be like, hey, Aaron, I want you to hire me. Like, let's have an interview right now. So you're not going to do that in a mess. People are doing that. I had one guy and I absolutely love him and he's adorable, but he was like, I found a company that I've wanted to work for and they're hiring and I'm going to be in Montreal that week and I'm going to go to their head office and be like, meet with me. And I was like, no, we're not doing that. Back up, slow down. Because as a recruiter, I don't have time, unfortunately, to meet every single person that applies, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's very much, I always say, like, let's build authentic relationships. Let's go slow to go fast. Like, it is a marathon, not a sprint. It might take 4 or 5 times of interactions of some form before that person is like, oh, I want to talk to Erin because I remember she said this and this. And so I am very much encouraging people to do the same thing. Like, don't come in and try to sell me right away because it's going to automatically exclude you from the process. I want to find the right people, but you can't find the right people if someone is coming in with this like persona and this pitch. And it feels like when it feels salesy, nobody wants it. No one wants to do business with we all are trying to sell something. Right. Mm-hmm, so mm-hmm. If we're coming at it front, we all know that deep down, but if you're coming at it and you're really obvious about it, when I'm actually looking for a candidate for a client, I'll reach out and say, you know what, I'm hiring for this particular position in this, in Halifax, as an example, your profile aligns to what my client is looking for. Would you or someone in your peer network be interested in discussing? Because then they're going to automatically like, wait, talk to me. Or they're going to be like, yes, so-and-so that I know is looking. And it doesn't feel like I've come in even as the recruiter with the direct ask. So I think you just have to nurture those relationships. And I tell people like, you just can't go with, no one's putting a proposal in front of you in a DM to say, sign here. And like, I'm going to, you just don't do that. But they do it with social media because it's different.
What do you, like, how do you remedy that? Like, if you have made that mistake, is there coming back from that?
With me, probably not. I'm sorry. But I mean,
move on.
But because here's the thing, if you've come off aggressive, which we've seen it in person, online, all the things, and it's probably more online because we have this barrier that protects us from, we'll say something that we wouldn't say in person because what's the saying? You wouldn't say it in person because somebody would punch you in the mouth or something, right?
Right. Yeah.
But I think I think it's really hard to come back from because that first impression is so crucial, especially when it comes to your career. Like you can do a lot of damage. And if you've done it, it's really hard for anyone, whether it's a potential employer or a peer or a recruiter or whomever, to not or like, we're not going to forget that you literally walked right up to us and made like someone interrupting in the middle of an event and be like, oh, I just needed it. Like that doesn't work. Like you have to just, again, it's the marathon, not a sprint. And we all know that there's an outcome or a goal at the end. We all have the objective of get in front of the right people, get the job, get the contract, whatever, but we can do it a little bit slower. Right.
I feel like logically that makes sense. But for a lot of people that goes against their lizard brain to want this immediate response, reaction, outcome.
I think the world we live in is everything is at the snap of a finger. It's like I could sit here right now and be like, I feel like Starbucks and I can spend $25 and they'll deliver it to my house, which is ridiculous. So I think we live in that world where everything is instantaneous and there is that gratification. But there are still things that no matter how much time is accelerating at speeds we have no way of comprehending, or technology or what have you, there are things that are always going to require the human touch and element. And that is one of those things.
Menna, which brings me to the F word that I know you always say, which is the follow up.
Oh yeah.
Right? Like that's what we're talking about here is like use that. Don't be aggressive. You've got time for a follow up. There's always time.
There's always time for a follow-up. I 100% preach to schedule follow-ups. A fun day to do it is Friday because it's follow-up Fridays. But I really encourage people, if you're going to a live in-person networking event, an online virtual networking event, if you have a job interview or you're connecting with a recruitment agency that you know is going to take care of you and walk you through this journey, not the destination, just to really schedule time and make sure you're offering value up front. That's really key. And especially with the holidays, I'm not exactly sure when this episode is going to air, but I really say the holidays are a really great excuse to slip in a nice email like, wanted to send you happy holiday greetings. Just, like touching base, sending you the best of the season, whatever that message is. And you can slip in something of value, not a pitch. Again, to Jen's point, then it's a really great excuse to do that and keep you top of mind. Now, because if you go to a lot of networking events, like some of us do, having that I just saw you the other day is just key to staying present and top of mind and keeping that personal and professional brand going.
I feel like also what has worked for me is if I'm going to something and I know they're going to be there, is doing like the pre-networking poke. Right? So then you've created a touch point. You have a reason to break into a conversation or to flag them down in the hallway or whatever it is at the conference. And then you also have a follow-up opportunity. So that's worked for me in a lot of situations if I know where someone's going to be.
That's pure gold. And another one, if you know that Jen is going to be at an event, for example, and she is helping you find that career placement that is going to change your life, to just give her a heads up a little bit in advance. Like, hey, I'm going to this. Is there someone I need to talk to while I'm there that is also attending? So that pre-poke definitely helps stoke that fire. So the follow-up just means so much more.
Yeah. Anything to add on the follow-up? Jen, I'm wondering too, like, do all these rules apply if you're looking for advancement within your current company? I feel like yes, for the most part.
Yeah, it does. And I think why we've all been so afraid of the follow-up or the outreach or any of the things is that for a very long time it was know what you want, go in and ask for it. And the world has shifted. We still have that same mindset of I've got to get the sale or I've got to get the meeting or I've got to get whatever. But really the best relationships and the best opportunities are in the follow-up and not the meeting. Right. So just go into the meeting. I'm here to meet people. Right. It's the follow up after, and it's not going to be the first time you follow up. Right. I think like Menna and I chatted kind of a number of times online back and forth before I even was at an event. Right. And so it's just, I think we're always scared to put ourselves out there. But if we're always scared because we think we have to ask something in that exact moment, that's where I think that it gets lost in translation versus like, just follow up. And, when it comes to LinkedIn, like what somebody has posted, comment or reshare it. Like that's all you have to do to get noticed versus sliding into the DMs and saying, hey, I'm in Montreal. I'm going to come for an interview, even though you don't want to interview me. Like, we're not going to do that. Right. So the follow up is much more crucial, in my opinion, and the way you follow up than the actual meeting of, the individual, either online or in person.
Pure gold, ladies, pure gold. I love that we got to this point at the end of the year because this is all stuff we want to cogitate on while we have Baileys and hot chocolate and gingerbread and all of those wonderful, warm, wintry things that we're all in for. And kick off 2025. Here's what I'm hearing in all of this. My takeaway is intentional, slow, and authentic. Right? It's going to get you there.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
Cheers to an awesome year. Here's to 2025.
Here we go.
Thanks, ladies, for joining us.
Thanks, Erin. Thanks, Jen.
Thanks again for listening. And don't forget to share and subscribe, of course, wherever you get your podcasts. You know what to do. Also, if you'd like to be featured on the after show, then check out the show notes for how to get in touch with either Menna or myself. The other way you can do that is just make sure you're following Leading Ladies over on social and DM either Menna or myself. All those links in the show notes where you'd expect to find them. Again, thanks for listening. For the whole team here at Story Studio Network, I'm Erin Trafford. Until next time.
We know podcasts.
Story Studio Network.